following is a presentation of the Belly Up Sports Media Network.
All right, everybody, week 7 is here. We've got lots to talk about today. Another round of injuries and IR designations, but there is some good news on the horizon for a couple of teams as we do have some quarterbacks that look like they're coming back. A lot of fun action today, even with the bye weeks and the crazy schedule that the NFL has given us there. But all kinds of stuff to talk about here coming up right now on Belly Up Fantasy Live.
Rieger getting traded to Minnesota changes nothing.
6'4" guys running 4.4s. These guys don't grow on trees, and a lot of times I'm willing to bet on, especially long term, on the freak athlete.
You don't ever want to overreact to what guys look like in preseason. There's been a ton of preseason all-stars that never make rosters or never pan out. Game time. Here we go. Hey, welcome in, everybody. It is Belly Up Fantasy Live for week 7 here in the NFL. I am Chase Thornton coming to you, as always, from the Mott and Bailey Basement Bar. And there's a lot to talk about today, even with, as I said, 6 teams on the bye this week. One of 2 weeks that's going to be the case for you this year. The other is just in time to get everybody ready for, the last second push of the playoffs, maybe even the start of the playoffs, depending on how big your league is. Week 13 will also have 6 byes, unfortunately, but we deal with what we have to deal with and we move on. So here to get that all ready for you and help you out, figure out your lineups for the day. I am not alone. I have my friend Kevin Wilson with me. Kevin, how are we doing this morning?
I am doing great, and even though the heat has returned here to the Dallas area, and but before that, it's been great. It's been a great sports weekend once again. We have Game 6 today in Rangers Astros.
Yeah,
we had some great football yesterday. Utah USC, just to throw that out there. Utah winning, yay!
Yeah,
and so we were at a sports bar the other night, unfortunately not yours, but and we were able to watch the Rangers and Astros, and Rangers blow the game in the 9th inning, but it was a great atmosphere, and we got football, of course, we got hockey now, basketball is getting ready to start, but baseball says no way am we giving away the stage. So I'm pretty jazzed up about what's going on in the sports world right now.
It's been a good championship series round so far. I mean, and there's some guys. I mean, Schwarber and some of those guys from the Phillies. There's been some hitting performances. There's been some fun games to watch. Like you mentioned, some late inning heroics coming in in both series. It's been fun to watch. It's been very fun to watch. It would have been a lot more fun if my Brewers could have been there, but
yeah. Well, too bad. Doesn't look like Jared's Diamondbacks are going to see their way through it, but they have played. They showed up big and won 2 out of 3 in Arizona. So it's been great. And I turned to Sandy right after the Rangers walked a 185 hitter to bring up Jose Altuve.
What are you doing?
Jose Altuve is going to hit a 3-run homer, and guess what? He did exactly what he did.
Yeah. He's 5'7" pounds of clutch hitting.
Yeah.
5'7" inches, I should say. Of just that's all he does is come up big.
He comes up big every time. So sports and the Wilson household are hopping, and we've got some games we're going to talk about here today. And so you got to be pretty happy if you're a sports guy or girl.
It's good. It's a good time of year. Good time of year.
It's a great time of year. So I'm really excited about sports right here.
Yeah. No. Yeah. We had a WNBA champion crown this weekend. Even. I mean, yeah. It's there's just stuff going on like literally everywhere you look. The Rugby World Cup is going on right now as well. I mean, there's literally up and down the dial, whatever you want to watch. But we are here to talk the NFL.
That's right.
And we'll start off. As we have for all season. We'll start off here and let's touch on the Belly Up Fantasy or football league.
Okay.
So We are coming off a big 119-102 win versus our friend Josh Mahler from Rising to the Occasion podcast. Again, get over there on Saturday, especially on Saturday mornings, and check that out. But we finally string a couple of wins together. All right. He had we were in a hole to start with. He had 29 points from Harrison Butker coming into Sunday because Butker had that giant game on Thursday Night Football. But
Right.
Josh had a rough week otherwise. He had some guys underproduce for him. We finally got some kind of production from Ramondre Stevenson, our top running back. Top is
Right.
used
As
loosely
I was
there.
talking about last week, people dropping him, that's insane.
No, you got to stay the course with him.
Don't do it.
I just wish that we could stay the course with him while we had another productive running back that was, kind of carrying the load for us. But we digress. We also got some production out of Drake London, a nice 122 yards receiving day finally. So like I said, we strung a couple together now. We are now 4-2. We have risen to 6th out of 14 teams in that league. But there's only one team at 5-1. We're 4-2. In the bushes, the gentlemen from our racing, our NASCAR podcast, are sitting atop the league right now at 5-1. There's 4 other teams tied with us at 4-2. So I mean, we're right there where we want to be, right within striking distance. If we can come up with a win this week. So this week we are facing Wiz with No Tartar. That would be our friend John Kirkner, and our friends from the Eye Test podcast. John's been on the show a couple of times and helped us out here. He's been a great guest. You can also find work
And
on
he's got
the
a
site
great
at Belly Up
show
Fantasy.
if you have never seen it. So just to plug in for him. Yes.
Definitely, John and the boys over there. So get over there and check that out as well.
If you absolutely, and if you look at our roster this week, even though we have 6 teams on bye, we only have one.
We line up pretty well with this bye week.
We are a lot better off than a lot of people are. So
I don't know how we managed that, but we did.
It's just one of those things where
luck of the draw,
the good
man.
Lord, reached down and said, "All right, you guys are blessed."
Yeah, because if we can put three in a row together here, we find ourselves right where we want to be in this league, and we'll have most of our top players, I think, would be past our bye right now. So we get lucky that way. Now John's already got a bit of a lead on us. He had Chris Olave and Rashid Shaheed both go on Thursday Night Football. Shaheed didn't get him too much. Had a nice little day, I guess, but could have been better. Rashid Shaheed looked open that whole game. We'll talk about that when we talk about the Thursday game. But Chris Olave, modest day, got him about 12 and a half points there. So we do find ourselves down a little bit after Thursday Night Football, but we're still anything can go. Now he still has Josh Allen to play. He still has Keenan Allen. He still has Tyreek Hill, which could be a big killer and has been a big killer all year, obviously, the number one receiver in football. And he's got Sam Laporta. So he's got a pretty formidable lineup here coming up. Now for us in our lineup, we had a little bit of a discussion, but it wasn't too much, about picking up the Cleveland defense this week to roll with them. We did that before the Thursday night game, so we did not have to deal with the fallout from the New Orleans Saints giving up 31 points to Jacksonville. So we have the Cleveland defense this week. We finally plugged Justin Fields back into our lineup last week just in time to get him, no pun intended, just in time to get him injured. So he's out. Rashawn Johnson out. But we did add Deontay. We do get Deontay Johnson back this week, and it's unfortunate because I was really hoping we'd get, with the bye weeks coming through here, and then with Khalil Herbert going on IR, I was really hoping we could get Rashawn Johnson back as well this week and really kind of give a boost to our lineup. But I really think that if Rashawn Johnson could get healthy during this IR stint for Khalil Herbert, he could maybe grab himself a much bigger piece of that pie down there than he's had. But moot point, Rashawn Johnson is out, still dealing with concussion fallout, which is not a good sign.
No.
But as you mentioned, we do get Deontay Johnson back, and that should help our receiver core, especially with Jamar Chase out this week. So
couldn't hurt, that's for sure. And he had a big week 1, So if he can get back in there and perform like that, we're pretty set.
Had a big week one. It was also, I mean, if you got to remember, everybody, he was tied for 6th in the league in targets among wide receivers last season. He's a target monster. Now, Kenny Pickett has not been the most accurate passer. He's been very, very average, and that's being kind at the quarterback position. But if you're going to see, 150 targets in a season, as Deontay Johnson can, or at least average that, then you're going to at least catch something. And Deontay Johnson is not going to be, he's not going to go scoreless this season.
No.
He's going to find the end zone at some point here. So
we touched on that many times. Yeah. So good to get him back. And
should be a real shot in the arm for our
it should be, like, as you mentioned, Jamar Chase is on bye for us this week. So we need all the help we can get there.
Yep. So glad to have him back there. And then the big news from our team is with Deontay Johnson coming off IR, we had to clear up a roster spot for him. The debate was, do we drop Kendre Miller or do we drop Dalvin Cook? We finally dropped Dalvin Cook, and it just it's disappointing, but it feels so good to just be done with it.
Yeah, as I talked about, I couldn't have been more wrong about Dalvin Cook, and because I thought that he would step in, even with Breece Hall. We knew he was going to come back sometime, but we didn't know he was going to come back and have 2 rushes over 80 yards or whatever it is that he's had now. He's been
phenomenal. Again,
he has been.
Looks healthy.
And you can make the argument about Aaron Rodgers not being there, but it has not slowed down Breece Hall. And so, Dalvin Cook, we could play taps on you, and so we had to hold our nose and just cut the cord.
Take the medicine.
And if somebody in our league wants to go ahead and pick him up, you have our blessings. Okay,
please do.
But I wouldn't necessarily be rushing to pick him up right now. So
no, he's been a lineup killer for people all year.
He has been, and you talk about stepping off the cliff. Here is the picture of a running back who hits the wall hard. We've all heard it. We've all seen it. But I didn't think at age 28 that would happen to him just yet.
He's only averaging 2.8 yards per carry. Now he's caught all 9 of his targets when they've thrown to him in the pass game, but for only 46 yards. So he's averaging 5 yards a catch roughly. He's lost a fumble already.
5 yards a catch underhanded, you'd think.
You would think.
Yeah.
39 carries. He's only got just over 100 yards. So
it's been dismal as dismal can get. So like I said, cord cut, done.
Yeah. Can you name the fullback in New York on the Jets? What's their fullback's name?
I could not do that.
Yeah, you and most of the rest of the industry too. Nick Bawden has 1 rushing attempt on the year and scored a touchdown. Dalvin Cook can't even say that. So, we're happy to be on the other side of him and moving on from him. So, if we can string, like I said, if we can pull this one out today, it would be something with the lineup he's going to roll out here at us without, like I said, the Allens and Tyreek Hill and Laporta. But if we could pull out a 3rd win in a row, that would put us right where we want to be atop this league. And so we're sitting okay. We have weathered most of the storm.
Whatever happens, we're okay.
I think we've weathered it nicely so far. All right, so let's talk about the Thursday game. We mentioned that a little bit. We brought that up a little bit with him having a couple players coming in on Thursday
and
night.
There's one particular player I'm going to touch on.
Well, there's one we might have to hammer on. But anyway, we did mention, Jacksonville scores the nice win on the road at New Orleans, 31-24.
As we all know, that makes us cat house individuals happy.
happy down there in the Wilson household.
And, Trevor Lawrence was questionable going into that game. And I have him on one fantasy roster. And I was like, well, if he doesn't play, I'm host. So I went ahead, picked up my favorite quarterback from the Seattle Seahawks just in case. But he looked all right up until he got that late touchdown. And he looked good on the ground. So
that was the thing I think that I took away.
Yeah. don't be concerned because he played on Thursday, so he's got time now to, kick his feet up and relax a little bit. So he's going to be fine going forward.
Yeah, that was the thing that I took away. You said he looked good on the ground. I mean, pedestrian day passing wise, 20 out of 29 for 204 yards and a score. Did not throw a pick, but ran 8 times for 59 yards. That's a season high, both in carries and in yards. I mean, he's been an effective runner in his career.
Especially Travis, Etienne is going to put the ball in the end zone twice in the first half.
Right.
Teams are going to have to focus on him, so that should give him some opportunities in that.
When he pulled the ball down and ran, he looked good. He had a couple of real nice runs, including, I believe, they said a career long 26-yarder. I mean, he looked like the knee was not, didn't look like the knee was limiting him. He had the big brace on. They showed a couple of close-ups there with, you could see the big bulky brace that he had on, or I assume it feels bulky when you're a position player. I've never had to wear one. You see the linemen. I mean, some teams issue them to their linemen just as a matter of course.
Right. When you weigh 350 pounds, that probably helps.
Yeah. But, for the position, for the skill position, we call them skill positions, players, the guys in the backfield, the guys at receiver in that, I've got to think that feels a little bit bulky, but he didn't seem any worse for wear for it. So that was nice to see there. You mentioned Travis Etienne, 14 carries, 53 yards, but a couple of scores there. Also caught three balls for 24 yards. So you got a nice day out of Travis Etienne there. Christian Kirk once again leads the way in the receiving game there. Caught all 6 of his targets for 90 yards and a score. Evan Ingram, decent day at the tight end position there. Caught 5 out of 7 balls, only 45 yards, but hey, at tight end, 9.5 points.
You'll take that out of your tight end.
You're not gonna be angry about it because that's pretty dang good for that crazy position. But the one that we want to hammer on here a little bit right now is Calvin Ridley. Calvin Ridley has been up and down. You drafted him as your wide receiver 16. He has not lived up to that. He's had 2 decent games, but other than that, he's kind of been a lineup killer. And Thursday night was his worst game. Now he was playing. He did see a lot of Marshawn Lattimore, which is tough for anybody. That's a tough row to hoe. And his day probably opened up the day for Christian Kirk to have a little bit better of a day than I think some people expected. But 1 catch for out of 4 targets for only 5 yards, and 3 of those targets came on the same drive. And he also had a rushing touch that literally went nowhere. It was a no-yard gain. But Calvin Ridley, you've got to think, should be seeing more than 4 targets in a game. And you drafted him as wide receiver 16.
Right.
Where is he?
Because, I've seen it right after the game, and it's continued till this day. Should we send Calvin Ridley to the waivers? Should we drop him? Should we,
Yeah, no, I'm not ready to say that.
And I looked into it, and as you said, he's been up and down, but he has 8 or more targets in 4 games.
Yeah.
And one other game, he has 7 targets. So 1 game does not equal, unless you're in an 18 league or something crazy like that. Yeah. But other than that, it's way too early to be discussing dropping Calvin Ridley, and I wouldn't do it. And with the quarterback that he has, he'll get back there. Yeah. Even though Zay Jones is going to come back at some point, but I still think he's the number 1 receiver down there. And if you drop him, you're going to regret that later in the season.
Yeah, you mentioned the amount of targets that he's seen, and you're absolutely right. I mean, on the season, he still has a 20% target share. 20% target share is big time for any player, receiver, tight end, receiver, whatever. 20% target share. You don't want to be dropping that on a team with a quarterback that's as good as Trevor Lawrence. Now, Trevor Lawrence hasn't been great this season, but we know that he's a good quarterback. We know this is an offense that can throw the ball, that will throw the ball. Calvin Ridley still, has shown this season that he still has it. He's still a player. But I think what we can take away from this game, like I said, seeing a lot of Marshawn Lattimore and being limited, I mean, really outside of the one drive, limited to only one look the whole game, is that you can view Calvin Ridley as much more matchup based than what we expected coming into the season. And coming into the season, we thought we were drafting a set and forget wide receiver 2 with wide receiver 1 upside. And he does have wide receiver 1 upside fair. Week to week.
Yes,
but he has really shown, I think, that he is going to be up and down. He's going to ebb and flow based on the matchup. And so you're going to want to really look at that going forward if you've got Calvin Ridley. If you have other options that are more steady in your lineup, then you shouldn't feel bad about sitting Calvin Ridley at any point. Right. But yeah, your point about dropping him is completely the truth. Do not drop.
He's got Pittsburgh next week. That's a matchup you got to like. And then he has the bye. Then it goes up against San Francisco, which you can't like that at all. That's the game right there. We're talking about sit.
So yeah, so if he can come away with something in that Pittsburgh game,
and he will.
Say he catches 6 balls for 90 some yards and a score, or 100 some yards and a score, or whatever. If you can then at that point convince somebody to jump on that name value and give you something more stable, either to upgrade your running back position or get one of the bigger name tight ends, one of the more reliable tight ends, or if you can upgrade your lineup by getting rid of him after that Pittsburgh game, before he sees that San Francisco game, and before you have to deal with that going forward, I would do that. I would do that completely. If you can get out from under
you could definitely discuss
the roller coaster headache.
Hopefully your league mates, well, hopefully they're watching, but maybe not paying attention to this particular part of the show. So, because they'll be alerted to what you're trying to pull off here. So, but yeah, if he and Pittsburgh is the game, I'm telling you, you can mark it down. Kevin said right now at 10:23 that he's going to have a big game next week. Put that down in your notebook.
That would be real nice if you can use that as a springboard to ship him off and upgrade your roster elsewhere. Hopefully, like I said, I mean, you drafted him as your wide receiver 2, but you drafted him to be that wide receiver 2, hoping that he'd be set and forget, and he has not been that way so far this season. In fact, even after the other night, so now he's got one more game played than most people. He's sitting in wide receiver 26 on the season. So, that's nice and all, but like I said, the bulk of his production has come out of 2 real nice games. He had the big game week 1 where we all rejoiced and thought, oh, he's back, 100 some yards and a touchdown. He had the nice game a couple weeks ago, like I said, 120 some yards against Buffalo. But outside of those 2 games, he really has been very pedestrian or unplayable. 3.2 points in that's standard, but PPR wise, 5 points in week 2, 7 points in week 3, 6 points in week 6.5 points in week 6. So outside of those 2 weeks of production, 2 out of 7 games, he really hasn't been a startable player. And so while you've got a flex player based on his ranking right now, if you look at his actual track record of production, he hasn't given you near what you paid for him in the draft. So if you can get out from underneath him, do it. On the other side of the field, the Saints, Derek Carr, kind of a big day, 33 passes completed, 301 yards and a score. He did throw a big pick, but that's what you're expecting out of Derek Carr.
Yeah, he's the definition of fantasy versus real world. If you had him in fantasy, you were happy. If you have him and you're a New Orleans fan, you're not happy today.
It's just kind of, you're kind of great.
Right. And you can pretty much say that about the whole Saints team. But, what are you going to do going forward? At this point, who's better on the wire?
Yeah, you're not.
If you waited around and got Derek Carr, you're pretty much, that's what you have.
Chris Olave, we mentioned here, 7 catches, 15 targets for Chris Olave. Could and should have been a much bigger day for Chris Olave, a guy that I know you liked coming out of last year. All season, you were a big cheerleader of his.
If
I
anybody's
have him
out there
across the board.
in any of my leagues that are saying, "Hey, I'm looking to trade Chris Olave," you can contact me.
No, I drafted him a lot in redraft this season. I have a lot of Chris Olave. Could have been a much bigger day. 15 targets. That's pretty substantial. You don't sneeze at that. Even when you consider that they threw the ball 55 times.
Right.
Even when you consider that they threw the ball 55 times, 15 targets is a lot. I mean, he's seen double-digit targets almost every week. Chris Olave, he has become. I mean, I think it's no hyperbole, or it's not going to be surprising to anybody to say that Chris Olave is their number one receiver. But
absolutely.
A career high 15 targets they're seeing. So
I don't want to hear about this other,
Michael
guy.
Thomas.
Yeah, Thomas.
Although,
out there, and he's been all right. He's looked all right, but he's not Chris Olave. He's not Thomas anymore. So.
Yeah, he's not can't guard Mike necessarily, but they did look for him quite a bit. I mean,
he is the number one receiver there. There's no question about it.
Michael Thomas, 3 catches on 7 looks for 42 yards and a big score, but he was targeted in the end zone several times. They are still looking Michael Thomas's way, and they should be. I mean, he's still a big body. He's still a good receiver. He could still make contested catches.
I'm not saying he wipe the rear end with him.
He's just no longer the absolute sure thing that he was.
Right.
When healthy.
And so hopefully you drafted him with the thought that he would be, wide receiver late 2, early 3 like that. If you did that, then you're okay.
I liked Michael Thomas coming into the season in best ball formats because of the unknown of, is he going to come back? Is he going to be, can't guard Mike, or is he going to be just a normal guy, just another guy? Is he going to be hurt? Because he's got that label hung around his neck now.
Well, it's deservedly so.
Yeah. I mean, he's been hurt. We haven't seen much of him in the last 4 years. I mean, he receiver of the year in 2019.
Ever since he had 190 targets or whatever that was years back, he has not been the Michael Thomas.
But no, he's getting you 11 points a game so far this year. I mean, yeah, he hasn't been bad at all. It's just he's no longer the fantasy absolute superstar that he was in 2018, and 2019.
Hopefully you did not draft him with the thought that he was going to be a fantasy superstar, because if you did, then you're disappointed.
A guy you might have faded in the drafts because you weren't going to have him for a while, but a guy who we know has been and can be a fantasy superstar was the other night. Again, Alvin Kamara, 17 rushes for 62 yards. But the big news with Alvin Kamara, 12 catches on 14 targets for 91 yards. This dude got you almost 30 points without even seeing the end zone.
Yeah,
what a day.
That's the statistical, improbability. So he's going to find that end zone.
Oh, he's going to.
So if we talked about this, that we were not going to wait around for Alvin Kamara, and we didn't. And people that got him and just waited around because you couldn't put him on your IR spot, just had him sitting there. You got to be pretty happy. That's like getting a later season free agent addition, and he's kicking butt. So,
well, and you had Jamal Williams come back off of the injury, and he saw 5 carries, only 5 carries for 14 yards. Not a big role, but coming off of the injury, we didn't necessarily expect him to jump in and have a real big role. Was not targeted in the pass game. Kendre Miller didn't see any usage at all on offense. And so, I mean, this was the Alvin Kamara show, even with all 3 running backs, all 3 of their top running backs active and healthy for the first time this season. You've got to like what you saw out of Alvin Kamara there. And again,
you do.
Even if you account for the fact that they threw the ball 55 times, 14 targets is an absolute monster share for anyone at the running back.
Any player, let alone running back.
It's the second time this season we've seen him have 14 targets in a game, and he's only played 4 games.
Right.
I mean, and the other time that he saw 14 targets, he caught 33 of them. Now, it's for only 33 yards. He's not getting a ton of yardage on every catch, but if you're in a PPR league, You don't care if he goes anywhere, because
nice
if he catches 13 passes for 0 yards, he still got you 13 points.
Absolutely.
He's going to get you double-digit points just by stepping on the field, it seems like, almost. And so, yeah, I mean, if you waited around for Alvin Kamara, or if you took the chance on him earlier than everybody else in your league and could survive those first 3 weeks, you're coming out of that smelling like a rose right now. He looked great the other night.
And as you mentioned, Miller, on the other hand, it's
been rough.
It's time. Yeah, we can't drop him because he already played, but he's the next guy on our roster that needs to sit down.
Well, and he's a guy that couldn't get healthy himself necessarily to be able to take advantage of Kamara being out of the lineup.
Absolutely.
And we're seeing the same thing right now with Chicago, with Khalil Herbert on IR, with Travis Homer having been hurt, with everybody else having been hurt, literally. Deontay Foreman inactive. Roschon Johnson cannot stay healthy to be able to take advantage of that himself. So, real unfortunate situation for a couple of highly touted rookie running backs there who had or have, in the case of Roschon Johnson, it's still ongoing, an opportunity in front of them to really grab a share of that running back workload on their team. And something that, as fantasy managers in the current running back climate, we're clamoring for anybody to rise up and become another usable target, another usable option. And these guys both have just, figuratively, literally-ish, dropped the ball when it comes to that.
Right. And, I'm talking about in redraft when I'm saying Miller. If you got him in Dynasty,
no,
I think that would be a mistake.
Yeah, no, the two of them you got to hang on to in Dynasty format.
Because, the Kamara, as great as he is, that escapade is going to come to an end at some point. So, and Miller's going to get that opportunity at some point, and I think he's going to thrive in that role. I
think he'll be a good NFL player. It's just unfortunately he wasn't able to be healthy when he had the opportunity. And almost anybody in the league is sitting behind Alvin Kamara. There's a handful of guys in the league that you're starting clearly in front of Alvin Kamara.
Right. If you drafted Miller,
even at this point in his career,
you did that later in the draft, and so it's not like you we took Dalvin Cook. And now we had to drop him. That's a little different situation right there. So Miller didn't cost nearly as much. And so, but in redraft though, it's safe to cut him loose.
Yeah. Kendry Miller at this point right now he's roster filler in a redraft format. Wrapping up this Thursday night game, then Taysom Hill, another nice game. And in a game when he did not take a pass attempt. Now he took some snaps, but he ran a lot of wildcat quarterback and did not have a pass attempt. Ran 5 times for only 18 yards, but he did have the big score. They were using him in that capacity. Had a play or two that actually I think got called back too for penalty. But 4 out of 5 catches, 5 targets, 4 catches, 50 yards. They are using him more as an actual receiver, and he's still getting those, like I said, wildcat quarterback touches, and you still never know.
You never know.
If Taysom Hill's out there, you never know if he's going to toss it or not.
Yep.
So he's become kind of a fun. He's always been that gadget kind of Swiss Army knife player.
And you just don't know from one game to the next what you're going to get out of him. He's on my bench this week, and he did well. So then next week, put him into your starting lineup. As we mentioned, Freemuth is on the IR, and so you might want to put him in your lineup. Then he'll give you 3 points.
Right, couple of nice weeks in a row though for him. In terms of scoring, if you used him at tight end, I actually had to plug him in one of my dynasty leagues because of the 7.
15,000 players that are on buy this week.
8,000 buys. Yeah.
Right.
I actually plugged him in one of my dynasty leagues at my quarterback spot. And he rewarded me with his best score of the year, which is nice. Without even throwing a pass. He got me at least not killable, quarterback numbers for the week. So I was thrilled with that. But yeah, he finds the end zone for the first time this year. but last couple of weeks has really, has had some nice showings. So he's finding himself on that tight end streamable capability. I'm not going to plug him in and forget about him even at tight end, but he has found himself very, very streamable here the last couple of weeks and is getting work now outside of, like we said, outside of playing that Wildcat quarterback. They are actually using him as a receiver here, which is nice to see. All right, let's take our first our ad break here, and when we come back on the other side, we're going to talk about some of the big headlines that are happening this season or this week right now. Again, a lot more injury news, but we've, like I said in the cold open there, we've got a couple of positive things to talk about on the injury front or on the active and inactive front. So first, let's listen to our friends from SeatGeek, and then on the other side, we'll hit the headlines here.
Hey everyone, it's Ryan from No Credentials Required to talk to you about one of our newest partners at Belly Up Sports, SeatGeek. Yeah, live sports is great on television, but the feeling of being at the arena is a priceless experience. That's why our friends at SeatGeek are there to help you find the best tickets at the best prices. Not only can you get tickets to sporting events, but you can also get tickets to concerts, comedy shows, musicals, and more. Search for your desired event now at SeatGeek.com, enter promo code BellyUpSports at checkout, and you save $20 off your first purchase. SeatGeek. Life's an event. We have the tickets.
All right. Now you mentioned, you've mentioned a couple times here now, Pat Freiermuth going on IR, and yeah, he's one of several this week, unfortunately. Now, Pat Freiermuth looked like he was going to come back this week. He's been out dealing with injury.
He hurt himself on Thursday.
Re-injured, or kind of re-aggravated that injury on Thursday in practice. They look at it and they determine that their best course of action was to put him on IR, take him out of the equation for a month.
Even though he's missed games, that still means he has to miss 4 more.
Yep. The actual IR designation from that point forward, you miss 4 games by default, and that's at least 4 games. I mean, there's no guarantee he comes back right after that. Right. But the already thin tight end landscape gets thinner. This is a guy that we drafted as the 8th tight end overall. We were hoping for starter numbers out of him. We haven't barely seen him on the field, unfortunately, this season so far.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, we thought we were getting him back. We thought we were going to be getting him back this week. And, we'd had a couple of touchdowns out of him in the first 3 weeks of the season. Now, he hadn't caught a whole ton of balls. I mean, he hadn't been prolific, but he had been efficient with the looks that he was getting. He got a couple of touchdowns for us there, but a guy that we drafted as tight end number 8 going out, he's on IR. Another tight end that went on IR this week that we thought we were getting back, Greg Dulcich, a guy that was a real popular sleeper pick.
Right. He's out.
And had already missed a ton of time and had already been on IR. He goes on IR again after re-aggravating that hamstring injury in the Denver game last week. So we're without him as well. That's not as big a blow probably to your lineup as the Freiermuth thing is, because no one on the Denver Broncos has been all that great for fantasy purposes. But again, it makes an already thin tight end landscape that much thinner. Other IR news: Damian Harris, the running back for the Buffalo Bills, goes to IR.
Right.
Now, there's a guy that we drafted thinking he was going to have a bigger role than he did, and actually has seen his role usurped by Latavius Murray up there in Buffalo. So again, I mean, Damian Harris going on IR, I don't think that necessarily does a whole lot to hurt you, because you weren't getting anything from him anyway, no matter where you drafted him. Latavius Murray has had much more of the role that I, for one, and a lot of other people thought that Damian Harris would fill, in terms of being the short yardage or the goal line or the pounder to James Cook's light. He'd be the thunder to James Cook's lightning, is I think how a lot of people saw that backfield playing out. And instead it's been much more Latavius Murray, and it's been much less of a thunder and lightning type scenario than it has just been they're mixing in Latavius Murray whenever they want to mix him in. So you're missing Damian Harris on IR for at least 4 weeks, but the big news running back wise, when it comes to the IR is happening in Los Angeles, where the Rams have to place both Kyron Williams and Ronnie Rivers on IR. That's their top two remaining running backs. We all came into the season thinking Cam Akers was going to be the guy. Cam Akers was the guy for about 8.5 minutes, and then they traded him to Minnesota.
Which he has not surfaced in Minnesota as of yet.
No, not as of yet, because the Vikings still keep giving carries to Mr. Madison. So yeah, Alexander Madison. But Kyron Williams and Ronnie Rivers both going on IR, so they're both going to miss a month here at least. So you're looking at now a situation where it's Royce Freeman, who's kind of been up and down from their practice squad, their rookie draft pick Zach Evans, or street free agent ex Los Angeles Rams running back.
Absolutely.
Who has been all over the league, it seems like. I mean, the Rams cut him last season. Darrell Henderson's only 25 years old. He's not old.
Didn't it seem
He's
like
a young
they
running
dropped
back
him, cut him in 1990 or so?
Yeah, right.
And,
but he's not old, but it seems like he's been around forever. And the Rams have cut him, it seems like, several times. He went to Jacksonville last season, didn't catch on there. They cut him. He's bounced around a little bit, been on some he's been on a lot of visits. He's visited with a lot of teams in this, like we said, this running back climate where everybody's been getting hurt and everybody on the street is seemingly an option. He finally does become an option in Los Angeles. I think that's mostly because he knows the playbook already. He should know the playbook already. I mean, there. But the news right now is that they've already elevated Henderson to the active roster. Their news today is that they're going to use Freeman and Henderson as their leads and mix in, quote, Zach Evans. What's your take on this Rams backfield, and who are you, if any, looking at here at using today?
Well, if in a situation like this week particularly, that as you mentioned, we got 1,700 players that are on bye, and this is a question I posed right before we went live: is it Freeman? Is it Henderson? And this week, especially, and guys just coming off the streets, unless your name's Baker Mayfield, that's probably not going to work out very well this week. And so I'm going to add on Royce Freeman this week, and I'm probably going to, unless you're in our situation where we don't have a lot of players on bye, but if you're not, and probably like most, I would probably get them and then you put them in your starting lineup because you don't have a lot of other options available to you.
Right, yeah, rough week that way. Now it's a good matchup based on the Steelers. Steelers give up 7th most points to opposing fantasy running backs. But when you're talking about a bunch of guys who really haven't played, and in Darrell Henderson's case, haven't played literally at all lately, it's just such a crapshoot. Now we just talked about a couple of situations where a young rookie running back has an opportunity to maybe get himself or grab himself a bigger piece of the share of what's going on there. And so now, if Zach Evans can show out in whatever role they give him right now, however many carries, however many touches,
becomes even more of a non-factor.
Right. But, if Evans can grab a hold of that, I like the idea of him a lot. I mean, we've seen Royce Freeman. We know who Royce Freeman is. Royce Freeman hasn't necessarily been fantasy relevant for the last 4 seasons. Last time he did anything that was noteworthy would be 2019. I mean, he's just not. We know who Royce Freeman is at this point. Right. We've seen enough of him. We don't necessarily know that about Zach Evans because he's young and we haven't seen much out of him. But I mean, when you look at Royce Freeman, the last time he had over 100 attempts in a season was 2019. That's the last time he scored a touchdown was 2019.
Even started.
Yeah, I mean he's been on 3 teams since then.
Right, and so if the Rams were not playing the Steelers this week, if that was not the case, then none of these guys we're discussing would be fantasy relevant this week. to me.
Yeah, no, but
They
I mean
are
they're
playing the Steelers,
facing
and
the Steelers, and it's a good
can
matchup.
get shredded, and so
Now
it
the
might
nice
just
news
become a
for
question of
Los
who's
Angeles.
available in your league. If it's Freeman, go for it. If it's Henderson, go for it.
If it's
Yeah.
Evans, I mean, yeah, they're
Yeah.
all worth a speculative ad probably. I like Evans maybe longer term. I like Freeman probably best this week.
Yeah, 'cause
The nice
Henderson,
news for Los Angeles is that with Cooper Kupp back healthy, with Puka Nacua, with Tyler Higbee being healthy, and Tutu Atwell healthy, and I mean they've got
they'll be throwing the
they'll be able
ball
to
a lot, which is fine.
Yeah.
But that does not mean that fantasy relevance in the backfield.
No, not necessarily. So yeah, but like I said, I think we both agree on that. That yeah, Freeman is probably the play today. I for one at least like Evans maybe over the course of this, maybe 2 weeks from now or by the end of this IR stint, or to come out of this, I think with a bigger role. Darrell Henderson might be playing for a career here. So I think if Darrell Henderson gets any opportunities whatsoever, he's going to have to literally run with them this week if he wants to keep himself in the league. Other news around the league, and again, I hate the fact that all this news seems to wind, or it winds up being all around injuries. We don't have a whole lot of trade talk right now. We don't have a whole lot. There's not a whole lot of guys signing. We'll talk about a couple guys that signed here in a minute, but Deebo Samuel, hairline fracture in his shoulder. So he's going to miss a couple of weeks probably.
Yeah, we already know he's out. And CMC is hanging over this whole discussion like a black cloud. And maybe it's not even hanging over it. The cloud's on the all the way to the
It's so
ground.
tough because they're the Monday night game, and you're talking about
game.
The
and
top
I have
player in fantasy
in
football.
a couple of leagues, 2 dynasty leagues. And so one league, neither of his backups were available. So, it's either he plays or I pretty much in the dirt.
Right.
But
yeah.
other league?
I'm lucky in the one league that I believe I have him in one dynasty league. I believe I know I have him in at least one, but I believe the only one that I have him in, I'm able to put him in a flex spot, and I do have, as unexciting as it is, I do have Juwan Jennings. I do have, honestly, I think I have Cam Akers on that team. So, I mean, I've got guys that will play Monday night that I can plug in at the last second if McCaffrey doesn't play. But being the Monday night game really puts us all behind the 8 ball in terms of playing our, Christian McCaffrey, because like I said, you're talking about the top player at his position in fantasy football, number 2 overall right now, behind only Tyreek Hill, and a guy that's getting you almost 25 points a game just by stepping on the field. He's scored in every game he's played as a San Francisco 49er, including last week when he came out early. So, I mean, monitor that situation. Hopefully you hear something today. Hopefully you have something to pivot to, though. If you do not have anything to pivot to on Monday night with Christian McCaffrey, I think you need to assess your situation. If you are in a situation where you need, and it's about your personal risk assessment as well. If you're in a position where you need to win this week, you need to look at things and say, okay, am I better off playing it safe to try and get a win this week, or do I need to swing big to get a win this week? You may not be able to afford waiting for Christian McCaffrey. You may need to plug somebody in there by noon or 1 o'clock in the East where time begins. You may need to plug somebody in today and just take the chance that McCaffrey doesn't play, because if you wait for him and he doesn't go, you've forfeited any points.
Right. Especially because in the one league, I did add Jordan Mason. He was available. I did add him. But in the other league, both Mason and Mitchell neither of them were available.
Mm-hmm.
So, and Kyle, and that's all I'm going to say about his, because I'm not even going to try to pronounce his last name. All right. He is not startable in any fantasy format. So if that's your option, you definitely want to look and see if there's any other option that you have other than waiting on CMC.
Of
Like,
yeah,
the
of the
guys-
fullbacks in football, Kyle Juszczyk is probably the playable list. But yeah, he's a fullback in the modern NFL. It's not.
Right.
Yeah, you don't want to be having to. You don't
No.
want to absolutely have to do that.
But like I said, with 6 teams on bye, you may not have any
Whole ton of
options
options.
other than waiting around for CMC. So
Yeah,
you know,
and that makes it rough. Like
Yeah,
I said,
makes
if
it
you can
rough.
plug him into if you can plug him into your flex spot, which you should be anyway, being that he's playing Monday night.
playing on Monday night.
If you have him in your flex spot, yeah, remember
Then-
that you don't necessarily have to plug in a running back
A
for
running
him.
back, that's right.
So if Juwan Jennings is out there on the waiver wire, if I throw up a little bit in my mouth, but Ray McLeod, anybody that you know is going to be active for either team, Minnesota or San Francisco, if you can find an active player from Monday night's game, it might be worth trying. If you've got a roster spot available, it might be worth trying to pick that guy up so that you have at least some kind of backup plan if McCaffrey doesn't go. And I don't expect him to go, but I mean, hey, Brandon Powell, the wide receiver, 4th wide receiver for the Vikings, not an exciting option, but hey, he's going to be active. He has actually seen some targets this season. In the last 2 weeks, he's seen 10 targets overall. At least that guy is going to be in the game and on the field if McCaffrey doesn't go, and probably is available. I would guess I would put good money on the fact that
Yeah,
he's
he's probably
available in
not
your league.
1% owned
Yeah.
or
So,
managed or whatever the proper word is today. Managed.
but
Okay.
having
On the
Debo,
roster.
having Debo and McCaffrey, I mean, Debo would fill the McCaffrey role in a lot of ways
Absolutely.
if he were healthy, but he's not, and
He's
vice
already
versa.
out, so we know
With
that.
Debo
So let's
out,
go-
obviously
yeah,
McCaffrey
we're not-
fills that
Yeah,
role.
that's nothing to discuss with him because we know, fortunately, he is out for tomorrow's game. We already know that.
And I brought up a couple of returning or at least some good news in the injury front and the quarterback front. Deshaun Watson looks like he's going to play today.
Looks like
At first looked like he was going to be out maybe again this week. Looked like it might again be the PJ Walker show, coming off a big win over the 49ers. And I've rubbed that into Dan Mater enough, so I will let that go now.
Yep. And
But
fortunately for him, he's not facing the 49ers. He's facing the Colts,
yes,
who are 22nd overall against quarterbacks.
Colts have been a pretty good get right defense for fantasy
Look,
purposes.
just running backs are 21, quarterbacks 22, wide receivers 21,
Yeah.
and tight ends are 24.
Yeah.
So
No,
if
they
you,
give up points.
have
They
any
give up
Cleveland
fantasy
Brown
points.
players, and I'm speaking to you, Dale, because you're a Cleveland Brown fan. So if you have any Cleveland Brown players, get them in your starting lineup today.
Yeah, Indianapolis, like I said, has been a get right defense across the board for fantasy purposes.
Right.
So yeah, good matchup there for Watson, and nice to be getting somebody back, especially in this week when there's so many players on the bye. I
Correct.
mean,
And
you
Ford
may
is
be
supposed to
missing.
be back
You
in,
may be
so-
missing your starting quarterback. I mean, we're talking about Cincinnati. So Joe Burrow. There's Joe Burrow. There's Mixon. There's Chase. There's Higgins. Irv Smith. Evan McPherson, their kicker. I mean, there's Cincinnati offense is one that a lot of people have shares of. That was an
Of course.
offense people invested
Of
in
course.
this season. They're
Of
off.
course.
Dallas's offense with
Right.
Dak Prescott, with Tony Pollard, with CeeDee Lamb, with Jake Ferguson,
Yeah,
with
and the
their
list
top
just goes
defense in
on and on.
football.
So yeah,
They're out. Tennessee.
They're out.
So King Henry, you're missing. Traylon Burks hasn't been playing for you anyway, but DeAndre
No.
Hopkins is out. Chigo Conquo is out. The Jets and the aforementioned Breece Hall that we've talked about, Garrett Wilson,
Right.
the Carolina Panthers, Chuba Hubbard, and Adam Thielen, who has been a pleasant surprise. Houston
right.
with CJ
Adam
Stroud.
Thielen,
Yeah.
points. You got to give up because he's a guy that we've talked about in before the season began.
I loved him as a pickup.
So we can
Loved him as a pickup.
pat on the back. All right, to us, okay, because we we need some pats on the back sometimes. And with Thielen, I like him. He's a lot. He's doing, but he's out, as you said, because they're not playing. All right,
We got a question here from viewer Ricky Toberon.
Oh.
That's how I'm going to pronounce that. So Ricky, I apologize if I murdered that for you. He wants to know if he should be starting the Bears defense or Miami's defense today. Which one? Now the Bears are going to be playing the Raiders. They're going to be playing a backup quarterback here in Brian Hoyer today. And it's a home game. That game is in Chicago. The Raiders at Chicago.
That means a whole lot.
The Raiders, facing for opposing defenses, the Raiders are a good matchup anyway.
They are a very good matchup. And if you have Josh Jacobs, which I do, I'm looking forward to him getting right and changing that 2.8 yards per carry average around big time today.
Now, Miami is facing Philadelphia, one of the top top offenses in football.
You do not want to do that.
Yeah, and I mean now they've been good. They've been a good defense this season, but honestly, I think right now what I want to do is I want to take my chances with that backup quarterback that we see there.
And you're at home, and the only thing I could say to this is, are these your best only two options?
The Bears have not been a great defense. I mean, honestly, they have been a very poor.
I can tell you that right here.
Defense.
Chicago running backs 28, quarterbacks 29, wide receiver 17, tight ends 25. If that means anything.
For what it's worth, in my rankings, my weekly rankings, I have the Bears ranked at 17. I do not have the Dolphins as a playable defense this week. I have them outside my top 20. I'm going to tell you,
the opponent.
If you can't, to Kevin's point here, if you can't find a better option on the waiver wire, and
I can't imagine there's.
If you're asking about these two, so I'm guessing these are your two options. I would be rolling with the Bears defense today over Miami.
Right.
I don't like having to try and face that Philadelphia offense. That game could be a shootout.
You make sure you have your inner tube fully inflated. Because you're going to probably need that, because the Bears are going to get gashed. We know this. And as I mentioned about Josh Jacobs a moment ago, he is going to be, I think, big today as a running back for the Raiders. But he's going to need to be big with a backup quarterback. He needs to show up big. But Bears is the way to go here.
I don't want any part of having to face that Philadelphia offense. I don't want any part of having to face that.
Especially them coming off a loss last week.
They're going to be gunning. And we know that Miami scores a ton of points themselves.
That's right.
So this is the kind of game that could be a shootout. I mean, it wouldn't shock anybody to see this game go to be 42-35. Right. Honestly, I would not be shocked to see this game be a 24-17, a little bit lower scoring as well, but I mean, it would not shock anybody to see both of these teams put up a ton of offense today.
I'd be kind of surprised if it was 24-17, but yeah, I want nothing to do with Miami's defense in this game.
Not trying to face the Eagles. I want to steer clear of that.
And the Eagles lost a little swagger, and Hurts lost a little swagger with that crucial interception he threw in the fourth quarter of that game against the Jets. And so they need to gather a little swagger. Cowboys sitting there thinking, they lost. We might get some inroads. And I think Philadelphia wants to put a stop to any kind of discussion along that line. So I'm not saying they're going to win. I think they should win. But
they're coming out to gun. They're going to be gunning.
Right.
This is a big matchup. This could be a Super Bowl preview, to be dead honest with everybody.
And it's two offenses today that you want a whole lot of exposure to if you can.
At literally every level. Except for tight end on the Dolphins, because the Dolphins essentially don't use tight end.
Right.
Period.
Yeah,
they
might have a player
You're a good dude.
with a number that says tight end, but essentially they don't have one.
Yeah, no, I'm sure Durham is a good dude and his mom loves him, but Mike McDaniel does not love him, at least doesn't love calling plays for him. So, but we mentioned, so Deshaun Watson should play today. That's a good matchup. If you've got him, you can feel safe plugging him in, I think.
Yeah.
The other big quarterback,
pretty good about.
The other big quarterback who is returning and isn't returning yet, but is returning off of the IR, the PUP list. Kyler Murray had his practice window opened by the Arizona Cardinals. Now, Josh Dobbs has not been a killer this year. He's not been a lineup killer this year. You're talking about, a guy who a career backup. This is really his first kind of like extended starting experience in the NFL. And he's quarterback 17 overall right now. He's getting you 14 some points a game, but he's quarterback 17 overall.
If you have him in a 2 quarterback or, such like that.
Very good in that situation. Right. I mean, I just told you, if you're in a 16 team league, he's one spot outside of being a starter for you. I mean, he's performed much better than I think anybody in the fantasy community thought that he would. Now, he hasn't been great. I mean, 10 points last week, 8.5 the week before.
You were deceiving yourself from the very start. Maybe
he had a terrible week 1.
I know it's Oktoberfest, and I still got mine going on right there. Maybe you had too many of those if you thought that Dobbs was going to be, anywhere near the top 10.
So nobody thought we'd be getting a whole lot from him, but he's been a lot better than expected. Right. Now, Arizona's not going anywhere. Arizona's not going anywhere at all. There's been a lot of talk about
and they're Arizona. Not going anywhere today.
They're not going anywhere today either. No,
not going anywhere. Seahawks. There we have it.
But there's been a lot of talk about them possibly going for one of the top quarterbacks in the draft here now coming up this offseason. Right. But Kyler Murray, they've got Kyler Murray under contract. He's young.
That's right.
What are they going to do with
$790 million or whatever it was a couple of years ago?
But they do open his practice window. They're going to ramp him up over the next several weeks. I don't expect him back quickly. I expect him back at the end of that. Now, remember, it's a 21-day window when they open that practice window up. They do not have a bye week until week 14 in Arizona. Right. So they've got all kinds. I mean, they can afford to wait here with him. They're not, like you said, they're not going anywhere anyway. I do expect at the end of that window for him to be at least elevated to the active roster. He may or may not even be ready to go at that point. Remember, there was some talk in the preseason that we didn't know if we would see him at all this season. I don't necessarily know if he will or won't be physically capable of being on the field at the end of that 3 weeks, but I do expect him to be elevated to that roster. And I do expect that if we can see him at some point this season, we will see him at some point this season for 2 reasons. One, I think they have to evaluate and they have to have a good idea in their own heads with a new coaching staff, new head coach, new coaching staff.
Right. And
they need to know what they have in him.
That's right. So all the other coaches, they're, walking around the desert or whatever it is they're doing, trying to find some bottle of water or whatever it is. But the new coaching staff has no clue what he's can give them
in their system and with what they want to do. They need to know what they have in him. And secondly, if you plan on moving on from him after this season, and if there's one thing we know about Arizona, they're not shy about moving on from quarterbacks. Ask Josh Rosen about that. That's the whole reason Kyler Murray's there.
Yeah. Who knows where he is in the Pacific Northwest or
hang out
Mediterranean.
Somewhere. Yeah.
Who knows where he
wandering
is,
around the desert himself. But you are auditioning at that point. You're not just evaluating Kyler Murray for your own franchise going forward. You're auditioning him for other franchises as well if you can make a trade this offseason. So I do expect to see Kyler Murray back. And Kyler Murray being back, like I said, Josh Dobbs hasn't killed the fantasy value of guys like Hollywood Brown or James Conner when James Conner was healthy. Kyler Murray, though, I think Kyler Murray's a better talent than Josh Dobbs is. He's better talent.
Absolutely.
But again, we haven't seen him in this offense. So, but hey, good news there. If you've got Kyler Murray, if you drafted him, hoping you're going to have him, at some point here in the next month, you're going to see him, I would think. Real quick here before we sign off here, let's talk about a couple of games that we like maybe here. Is there a game in the early slate that you're looking at here, Kevin, that you're excited to see and why?
All right, so I'm going to go with the Kansas City Chiefs. Well, wait a minute, I got that backwards. That's my late.
That's the late window.
That's the late.
We agree on that.
Yeah, we agree on that one. And so I'm gonna, as we mentioned, the Bears earlier, and that's a game that I'm looking forward to because unlike the guys trying to start a defense with them, even with the backup quarterback, what kind of game do we get from Davante Adams? He's been very associated, unhappy. But when it's time to suit it up, you throw it to Davante Adams. So I think big game there. Josh Jacobs, as I mentioned, big game for him. And so if the Raiders, even with the backup, if we want to take them seriously, you got to, beat a bad Bears team. And so on the other hand, with the Bears, with a backup, you want to make sure I'm not starting any of those guys.
It's rough.
Yeah,
I'm starting
rough.
DJ Moore kind of because I have to.
You could make an argument with 6 teams on bye. You don't have anybody else to start. And if that's the case, he's the only guy I'm talking about that deserves to be on a fantasy roster today as DJ Moore of the Bears. So this is a game that should be interesting just based because you got 2 backups going at each other. And
Battle of backup quarterbacks. Secret Bagent man, Tyler Bagent.
That's right.
And
that's right. So
Brian Hoyer, the old man who's old enough to literally be his father.
That's right.
Awesome.
So, secret agent man and Get Smart, the Cone of Silence, and all that should be fully involved today. So that's the game right there that I am looking forward to, just on a fantasy perspective, which is what we're here for. So I'm looking forward to this game and seeing how exactly this thing plays out.
The game I'm looking forward to the most, probably watching at least, or is seen on television, is Detroit at Baltimore. But the game I'm kind of more interested in fantasy-wise, in terms of I think we can learn some things, is Atlanta at Tampa Bay. I want to see right now. I mean, Tampa Bay is good against running backs. Obviously, we know that Atlanta wants to run their offense through their running back position with Bijan Robinson and Tyler Algier. This is not a good matchup for either team in the running back situation. I mean, Atlanta gives up the third fewest points to opposing fantasy running backs, or fourth fewest, I should say. Tampa Bay is 23rd in the league in that respect as well. So, I mean, it's not a good matchup running back wise. It's not necessarily a good matchup quarterback wise either, but Tampa Bay does give up quite a few points to opposing fantasy wide receivers. So I'm looking to see Drake London actually produce today. I'm looking to actually watch him.
If he could produce, because as you mentioned, the running game
and that would help us. It would help us because we have Drake London.
So Drake London, we know that you like to watch our show pregame. So go out there.
Let's do this, buddy.
Go out there and kick butt. And so, because that's the one aspect of this, as you mentioned, that as you look at this, and they also are 21st against quarterbacks, so that means that he should have room to be able to operate back there and throw to a wide open Drake London.
Yeah,
so
I need to see Desmond Ridder do something here.
Desmond Ridder, please, can we do something right here? And just look for the wide receiver. Not so much Kyle Pitts.
Now, Tampa Bay is not great against, like I said, wide receivers. They're pretty good against tight ends. But when you talk about the tight end position, you talk about Atlanta, you've got 2 different players, and you've literally got 2 different styles. Jonnu Smith has been kind of a revelation this season. He's been a very good fantasy play at tight end for the most part.
That's right. And
when nobody expected him to be.
Before we went live on this show.
I have him in a couple leagues. I added him in a couple leagues this week.
As I had needed a replacement for as we free move, and I know I've been butchering that name ever since I started opening my mouth, but I needed a replacement for him, and Smith is the way I went, and I think that's pretty even Steven trade off right there.
Now Kyle Pitts is nominally a tight end, but functionally he functions much more as like a wide receiver. He's much more of a wide receiver usage wise than he is a tight end. He nominally that's tight end. So knowing that this is a good wide receiver matchup against Tampa Bay, I'm looking for Drake London to have a day. I'm looking for Kyle Pitts to have a day as opposed to necessarily Jonnu Smith. But I am with you. I picked up Smith in several leagues just because he's been
He's been very productive.
a very usable option at a very unusable position. So
That's right.
the other thing I'm anxious to see then this week is, I want to see what happens with this Tampa Bay passing game. Atlanta is a defense that I think you can have over the middle. I think you can find room against them over the middle. That would be Chris Godwin territory if you're looking at who to play against.
Even though they're solid against wide receivers.
They are very solid against wide receivers.
Quarterbacks and running backs.
But I think that the matchup bodes worse for Mike Evans then. I think that the matchup bodes worse for Mike Evans on the outside than I do Chris Godwin over the middle. If they had any tight end to speak of in Tampa Bay, I would say play their tight end because they're terrible against tight ends.
Right.
But I think that team can be had over the middle. I think a big reason they are ranked so poorly against tight ends is because they are weak over the middle against the passing game. And that is where Chris Godwin can shine. I like Chris Godwin today in that respect. So that is an interesting game to me to look at. We both agree that we want to be watching that Kansas City and Charger game in the afternoon. Go ahead and talk about that for
a second. So when you look at the Chargers, they are sorry against everybody but the tight end position. But when you have the tight end, it doesn't matter what the matchup says. You're playing Travis Kelce. Because the Chargers are top 10 against tight ends. None of that matters, one iota. But the rest of their defense, they're 31 against running backs and 31 against wide receivers. And we need to finally see what kind of wide receiver production are we going to get out of the Kansas City Chiefs. Because
needs to be a Rashee Rice day.
It does need to be him, and I'm praying that it is him. But, we all saw that they brought back in McCole Hardman, and I am not jumping for joy over him.
That's not a needle mover.
No, but it's one more mouth that I don't necessarily think that they needed to have over there. But Rashee Rice, and Mahomes is great a quarterback, and it helps his fantasy stats because he likes to throw all the ball all over the field. But it does not help your fantasy wide receiver production whatsoever. So maybe we can get a little bit more clarity against this particular defense because, as I mentioned, they are sorry, and they're playing on the road. So
the Chargers have been a get-right defense at every position except tight end. Like you said, they're good against tight ends, but you're obviously playing Travis Kelce. That he's matchup proof. You don't worry about him.
Doesn't matter if the other.
But they've been very poor against every other position.
Playing Travis Kelce.
Meanwhile, on the other side, Kansas City's been a tough matchup for everybody.
Right.
But you've got a high-powered offense here in the Chargers, so something's got to give at some point.
And we saw that the Cowboys shut down this high-powered Charger offense, and they did that on the road. So, and Kansas City, they're 4th against running backs, 8th against quarterbacks, 7th against wide receivers, and 15th against tight end. So there's no matchup on the Charger side that you say, wow, you're going to play, obviously, Austin.
You have to play Keenan Allen. You have to play Justin Herbert. You have to play Austin Eckler.
He's blowing the doors off the place. You have to play those guys, but you better temper your expectations.
In a weird bye week situation, and depending on who's hurt and everything else, Gerald Everett is a matchup based play. He's playable based on the matchup. I don't like it.
No.
I still have him
you've
only
got a better tight
18th
end
in my rankings.
You don't. You
I'd rather play. I would much rather play Michael Mayer against the Bears from the Raiders this week.
You could definitely talk me into that.
Honestly, we already talked about Jonnu Smith. I'd rather play Cole Kmet on the other side of that Michael Mayer game. I'd rather play Kmet than Gerald Everett because I think
Kmet is a quality
Bagent
player.
might be looking short. He might be looking to dump the ball off quick, and that would be a Cole Kmet territory there. I like Luke Musgrave from the Packers against the Broncos better than Gerald Everett. There's just a lot of guys that I would play over Gerald Everett this week.
Denver's 32nd and very dead last.
Yeah, they're very gettable for the tight end.
So if you got a Green Bay guy tight end, that's the way you might want to look at that. But the Chargers, I'm not.
It's a good game. Should be a good game to watch though. Should be a fun game.
I'm sure it will be. because it's always exciting when Kansas City and their fans and everything else, and then they got to show Taylor Swift 788 times, but
Got to do what you got to do. Grow the
You gotta
game.
do what
Grow
you gotta do.
grow the game. All
Yeah.
right. Real
So there
quick
we
here,
have it.
then we talked about this fact that it looks like Deshaun Watson will play. Daniel, elsewhere around the league, quarterback wise, injury wise, real quick
Don't
before we
expect
sign
Daniel
off here.
Jones to play today.
Daniel Jones
Um,
should be out today. Jimmy Garoppolo, we know, is out. Justin Fields is out. Justin Fields could miss 2 to 3 weeks now. It's coming out today. So be prepared for that, everybody.
Right.
If you do have DJ Moore, if you are looking at that, if you're looking at matchups defense-wise going forward, watch that game today. Watch how Tyler Bagent, I think it's Tyler Bagent, I don't know, secret Bagent,
You
man.
can pronounce
Watch
that
how,
however you want.
watch how he performs this week. But that might be an offense to target in terms of your defense, your DST matchups here in the next couple of weeks, because it does look like Fields will miss a couple of weeks. Ryan Tannehill also, they're on the bye this week, but does look like he could miss week 8 as well. So we'll have to wait and see whether it's going to be the Will Levis show or the Malik Willis show down there in Tennessee.
Yeah,
for
hopefully
week
you have
8.
no shares of that, of any of those.
Not in redraft anyway.
Right.
Running back wise, we already talked about the fact Damian Harris is on IR and he's out. Rashawn Johnson is out. Kareem Hunt is questionable. So keep an eye on that.
Yeah,
David
so
Montgomery
Ford,
for the Lions is out.
Ford is a go.
Ford is a big go. Ford is a big go. And I mean they had to elevate Deion Jackson to the active roster today too. So I mean, because they're dealing with other injuries as well, and with Hunt being questionable, it's and I expect him to win that game anyway against the Colts. It's a good matchup. Jerome Ford is a go today. David Montgomery going to be out today. Jahmyr Gibbs, it remains to be seen how healthy he is. But Reynolds is also questionable.
Reynolds,
so Jahmyr Gibbs is a good
came
plug-in.
across. He is active.
He's active.
Doesn't mean you
but
should
he's
have
been
him in your
dealing. Yeah,
lineup.
he's been dealing with his own injury issues. So Jahmyr Gibbs looks like the guy to have there and guy to run.
Yeah, if
looks
you
like
have
Aaron
him, if
Jones.
you have Reynolds, which I do in places that might be some. As we mentioned, with 688 players on bye, there might not be.
You might not have a better
another
option.
So Craig Reynolds is least active.
Aaron Jones, questionable, but looks like he'll play. I would plug him in if he does play because I expect that to be a good matchup against the Broncos there. Zach Charbonnet for your Seahawks, questionable. Probably trending more towards
leave
not
him
playing.
on your bench if you have him. That's not a go. The player that DK Metcalf is questionable.
Yes, he is.
And if he would stop
true game time
hitting,
decision.
Yeah, if
Unfortunately,
he stopped hitting doctors on the sideline, that would be awesome.
Yeah. Can you just calm down with that?
Yeah.
One more
Take a
returning
breath.
player today, too. One more returning player that we haven't necessarily mentioned. I don't know that I would plug him in yet, but I want him on my. He's definitely should not be on your waiver wire. Is Jeff Wilson Jr. from the
That's right. He's
Miami
active.
backfield.
He's active.
We've seen that Miami backfield's been a gold mine this
right.
year.
And if you
We
have
know that-
Mostert, don't be a bit nervous. He's going to get his.
No, put him in.
Doesn't matter what Wilson does.
But with HN on IR for another several weeks, Mostert's
right.
injury history, Jeff Wilson and Salvin Ahmed
if you
both
have
are
a chance to get
rosterable.
Jeff Wilson, jump.
Wide receiver wise, one thing we didn't mention, but I kind of alluded to it earlier, but Julio Jones was signed by the Philadelphia Eagles. He has been elevated to the active roster. Now, he does not know a whole lot of their playbook yet because he's only been in town for a couple of days,
He's had a
but
cup
he's
of
still
coffee and a bagel. That's all
6'11"
he's
or
had.
whatever he is. He's still a giant man and still a giant red zone target. Still a
Not
possibility
necessarily
there.
today, though.
Yeah, but I would not be playing him just yet.
No.
And I would also not take that as any kind of commentary on Devontae Smith. Those two men play completely different roles in an offense. And Devontae Smith is still going to be the wide receiver 2 there and a wide receiver 2 for your fantasy team.
Right. Absolutely.
Ride it out. Be patient with Devontae Smith. It will happen.
It will.
Marvin Jones is out for the Detroit Lions. Alec Pierce for the Colts is questionable. Kayshon Boutte, Juju Smith-Schuster, Demario Douglas, all questionable for the Patriots. You didn't want to use any of them anyway.
No, leave them all in your garage. All right, you can back the car out, but leave the Patriots at home.
Speaking of Chiefs wide receivers, Justin Watson is still out, but again, nobody from that room has really stepped up anyway. Jalen Guyton for the Chargers is going to be out. We said Deontay Johnson is active for the Steelers, Pittsburgh Steelers. We want to see that, and you brought up DK Metcalf. He is going to be a true game time decision. So monitor that. Unfortunately, it's a late window.
Active,
and Tyler Lockett's active.
Yeah, you got, and they're going up against the Cardinals defense, which is invisible. So
it's the late window, so it might put you in a little bit of a crunch roster wise, but just bear in mind, DK Metcalf is going to be a game time decision. Tight end wise, Kylan Granson for the Indianapolis Colts is out. Even more reason to play that Cleveland defense, and Hunter Henry for those same Patriots is questionable.
Yep.
That's not a matchup you want to deal with anyway against the Bills. Right. They are tough across the board. So leave your Patriots on the bench or leave them on the waiver wires was what I would suggest.
Leave them chained up in the backyard or whatever it is you're going to do. Just don't put them in your lineup.
Kevin, what do you got going on? Where can we find you here before we sign off? Quick?
All right. So you can always find me on X, Twitter X, whatever heck, at Kevin62 WILSEA. And this past week, I dropped my very first fantasy hockey story because, that season just got started, and I reviewed some of the things that happened in the first week. And as we mentioned earlier, the NBA starts on Tuesday. I have a article that will drop tomorrow. You can look at it at the Belly Up Fantasy Sports website. I give a week 1 preview of things to look for in fantasy basketball. So that's something you can look forward to, and just get over there to the Belly Up Fantasy website, Belly Up regular site. There's stories. There's lots going on, so it's time to be excited about. It's always been time.
There you go.
Up, but so get over there and check that out.
You can find me on Twitter right there, STT Chase FFB. Start, sit questions, trade questions, whatever else. I get back to you on that as well. You can find my rankings and other articles over there at bellyupfantasysports.com. You can catch me tonight.
Start and sit article for today. If you don't believe us, just mentioning it real quick, there is a start sit article on the Belly Up Fantasy website that dropped yesterday. So
get over there and check it out.
Take a look at that.
You can find me tonight on the on MD's Fantasy Football Show as we recap all the action from this week. And then you can find me at Operation Domination for MD's Fantasy Football Show on Wednesday nights as well. So for Kevin Wilson, I am Chase Thornton. We're going to tell you guys, hey, good luck this week. We hope that you guys, all your fantasy dreams come true, or at least the football ones.
And remember, October is coming to an end next week. Well,
jump in there and get some Oktoberfest.
Do some Oktoberfesting stuff before it's all said and done. So have a great week.
So we'll say Prost, Slanjava, cheers, but have a good week, everybody.
That's right.